Troy, today I'm so glad to have you with us. And we're talking today about Enneagram and how you use this in your coaching practice, which is called In Pursuit. So tell me about Enneagram and why do you find it so beneficial in your coaching practice?
Well, thanks for having me here, Julie, and Sterling and Matthew. When it comes to Enneagram, for me, I've done a lot of work over the years in personality typing. Some of you may be familiar with things like the old Myers-Briggs or the DISC, or some people use colors. For me, I found once I got exposed to the Enneagram, I realized this is probably the most robust personality assessment that I've ever seen. And it really helps you get almost like a clinical lens around your own personality. I don't know how many times I've had clients go through the Enneagram feeling like I'm reading them out of a book because it's so intuitive. And if we get the right data and we figure out how to interpret it properly, what it does is it gives you direction and perspective, awareness into what you did not know about yourself. And that gives you opportunities to figure out, where am I maybe struggling? Where are my red flags? And where's my opportunities? And what if I play to my strengths, not my weaknesses, and start to understand what kind of a leader am I? What kind of a lover am I? All of this stuff kind of gets touched on by the Enneagram. That's probably why I love it so much.
I have to admit that when I first saw it, I really started to fall in love with it too, because it helped me understand myself as a leader. And I think way too often I became a business owner and suddenly thrown into this world that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm supposed to know it all. But I found that there were lots of gaps in what I didn't know. And that's why I think that the Enneagram has been so good.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing this for, Troy?
Oh boy. I think I first got exposed to the Enneagram actually when I was in working in community, of all things. I'm a registered nurse by trade, and started my career with the military and then specialized in mental health back in 2011. And around the year, I want to say 2015, I was working in Calgary, working with the homeless population. And that's when I got exposed to the Enneagram through a physician that I had a really good rapport with. And she took me through it. And what I started to see just absolutely blew my mind. So I started back in 2015. So I've been using this now for the last 6 years. And sorry, what was I drew a blank here. Did I answer your question or?
Yeah, no, you did. You're halfway there. I think we were just talking about how long you've been doing this for, and
Okay.
kind of what yeah.
Okay, I thought it was an origin question, and I'm like, did I miss something?
No, continue the origin story.
Okay, yeah. So really, it was just this, like for the last 6 years, learning how to use this, learning how to interpret it. And even myself, I've gotten resources over the years, the individual sort of guide on Enneagram, and then trying to figure out the clinician's guide to it. And I've got a lot of dog-eared pages because I'm constantly in this book as a clinician, trying to guide some of my clients through an understanding of their personality.
And as a business owner, how has this helped? Because I know you're, a very successful business owner in your own right. To book in 5 weeks out is every clinician's dream in psychology. So tell me about how it's kind of helped you really grow your organization and kind of keep on top of your strengths.
Okay, that's a great question. Thanks, Matthew. I think really it comes down to awareness. So my clients understand this, and I'm glad you're specifying business owners now, because sometimes it may look like there's a bit of a gap. But when clients are trying to understand themselves, there's a timing for everything. I also run a psychotherapy practice. So that's not typically something that I would introduce to my counseling clients is Enneagram, because that's more for my coaching clients. These are people that have sort of found their stride, their routine, but they're challenged in, where do I grow from here? Do I just go through my life, or can I grow through my life? And part of growing oneself is knowing oneself. And anybody who's been around John Maxwell will remember this from the laws of growth. The law of awareness is that very thing. In order to grow oneself, you first must know yourself. So where do we begin? If you're a business owner, This is the insight you need into your blind spots. Because I'm going to just say the obvious, you don't know what you don't know. And often the mind that gets us into the mess is not the mind that gets us out. So this is how we learn to grow together. John Maxwell said it so beautifully before that if we want to go fast in life, go alone. You don't need people, just go. But if you want to go far, you have to learn to go together. And that's why we build teams and systems and we figure out, well, how do I, as an entrepreneur or a business owner or a leader of any right, how do I get to that next level? It's going to be likely with a team. And if you're not working with a coach, if you don't have that insight that can see what you don't see, how are you going to know? So that's the main reason why I would do Enneagram with a business owner, is to teach them vulnerabilities in themselves, to see where am I weak, where am I strong as well. Because the one thing that I actually challenge business owners to think of and consider is, do not play in your area of weakness. That is better left delegated or leveraged in another leader that you've teamed up with. You work in your area of strength. You develop those areas where you have maybe some propensity for, but when it comes to the places where you're weak, that's where you learn to tag and surrender that to somebody else on your team. And this is why I do what I do well, because I want to help them do what they do well. And together we get synergy, and the results are just nothing short of beautiful. So
I see
Awesome.
that was
No,
very
that's
Marcus Buckingham, how you say that, work in your areas of strength and not weakness. But okay, Troy, I'm big onto the story side of things. So what story do you have that when you've done the Enneagram with a leader, where there's been that epiphany that, it's like been wow.
Okay, now you're getting me to think. Okay, I can think of, actually, yeah, I can think of one right now. One of them is actually another coaching client of mine. I'm going to do my very best to keep a lot of this anonymous, but there is, he's still a client of mine. He runs a very successful enterprise out of Calgary, multimillionaire. And when I started working with this gentleman, it was as a result of working with his wife. And I spent about 2 years working with her, helping her develop and grow. He decided to tag along one day. And in that session, he's like, "Do you coach?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it was interesting because he wanted me to coach him. And when I decided to take him on as a client, we started working through Enneagram. We started working through areas of weakness and development. And this is a very successful leader. He's in his 70s and he's not lacking anything really. And he was frustrated. He was angry. He was agitated, and he didn't understand why. And as we went through his Enneagram, we started understanding what type of a leader he was. He is a visionary. He's not the workhorse. At his stage in life, he's learned how to leverage people, and they do his bidding, so to speak. And he likes that. But even then, he started realizing that his vision was getting cloudy. He wasn't quite dreaming like he did. He needed to understand what he needed to do different. And that led us into this crazy conversation that he was not a big fan of. And it was wild because at one point through our journey, I realized this man with all this success isn't growing anymore. He stopped growing. And that's the question that I led with when I first started working with him. And it might have been a bit too heavy of a shot right up front, but I'm like, when did you stop growing? He didn't like the question. He started defending himself, peacocking, so to speak. You have no idea, and I don't know whether to take the Benz or the Jag, and I've got a CFO, and I've got this and that, and I'm like, okay, he's peacocking. He's trying to tell me how important he is, and he makes who knows how much more money than I do, and he's still frustrated. And I kept my mouth shut. I just kept nodding, and then I looked at him again, and I said, when did you stop growing? You didn't answer my question. He didn't like the question the second time even more. And then he started defending his position again. He started telling me about all the books and all the tapes. Now we're dating ourselves, all the tapes that he used to listen to. and he knows what I'm up to. And he's like, I had Tony Robbins as a coach and I know Deepak Chopra. And I'm like, okay, this isn't relevant right now. And then I asked him a third time, and I winced when I asked him, and I said, you still didn't answer my question. When did you stop growing? And that's when he finally realized. He realized that what he was seeing in the Enneagram, what he was seeing in his vulnerability, he wasn't addressing. And he then told me that he stopped growing about 6 years ago. He let life get so busy, and his busyness became his business. He wasn't dreaming. He wasn't innovating. He wasn't delegating. He wasn't developing. And when he finally owned up to that and said 6 years ago, I made the point very clear when I said, okay, now tell me about your Thanksgiving dinner 6 years ago. Like, does it nourish us today? Does 6 years ago meal do anything for us today? No. Same thing with our development. You cannot rest on 6 years ago growth. Same thing I do with counseling clients in terms of their defeat. Your failure or your defeat from 6 years ago does not have to have that relevance in the present right now. So that's where I've used things like the Enneagram to shape people and move people to a place of insight where they realize, I've got to get back in the habit of growth. And that starts now. And it's much like another growth principle. I often will use rubber bands to illustrate this. It's this idea of tension. If we have no tension in our life, we're not growing. For counseling clients, I try to resolve some of that unhealthy tension, but then with coaching clients, it's about putting them back under tension. And here's exactly what I showed my other client was he got complacent on a high level and there's no tension. So he needed to reset. He needed to be re-stretched. And that's part of the benefit of having a good coach is our job is to point you towards the person you're trying to become. And all of that comes through the Enneagram because we want to narrow the focus as to where are you going to get the most result for the effort that you need to increase.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's really about having that direction that creates, perspective on where you want to go, but then having the awareness about yourself and how best to drive you there.
Exactly.
That,
exactly. Well done. That's
really awesome.
Summarize it. Yeah.
Today in our speed networking, you will have the opportunity to hopefully bump into Troy during speed networking. If you do, you are not allowed to extend the time and he's not allowed to accept it. So everybody will just have 3 minutes to speak with Troy. We are launching Troy's course today called Enneagram, Grow Yourself, Your Business, and Your Life. It includes an introductory video, an Enneagram quiz, and then a one-on-one coaching session with Troy, where he will cover your personal Enneagram type, your strengths, and your blind spots. The course also includes videos of the 18 Enneagram types, which you will have lifetime access to in order to learn about others and yourself. All this for just $2.99. I'll be sending out emails about the details of this following today's event. So please be sure to whitelist my email address, julie@leaderscan.ca, so you can get all the email updates about this course and other speed networking events. Hope to bump into you in speed networking.